It was one of those blazing summer afternoons when the neighborhood pool felt less like a luxury and more like a lifeline. My kids had been begging all morning to go swimming, and with the sun beating down, I finally gave in. Towels in hand, sunscreen packed, and floaties bouncing around, we set off for what was supposed to be an easy, carefree day. But what happened next turned into one of the most unforgettable neighborhood dramas I've ever experienced. Just as my kids were about to dip their toes into the sparkling water, she showed up. Karen. Every neighborhood seems to have one, and ours was no exception. With her oversized sun hat, clipboard in hand, and an expression that screamed superiority, she was the self-appointed guardian of the pool, and from the way she marched over to us, I knew trouble was brewing. She didn't waste a second. "Your kids can't swim here," she barked, her voice sharp enough to cut through the laughter and splashes of the other families nearby. My kids froze, confused and embarrassed. I turned toward her, stunned. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" I asked. Karen lifted her chin, her sunglasses sliding down just enough to reveal eyes brimming with disdain. "This pool is for responsible residents only. Children running wild just make it unsafe. I'm banning them from swimming." I almost laughed, thinking it was a bad joke. My kids had never caused trouble at the pool. They were polite, followed the rules, and mostly just splashed around in their corner without bothering anyone. But Karen wasn't joking. She actually believed she had the authority to make such a decree. The other parents nearby went quiet, watching the scene unfold like it was live theater. My kids looked up at me nervously, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. If Karen thought she could shame my children and dictate who belonged at the pool, she had just picked the wrong battle. I took a deep breath, stood tall, and locked eyes with her. "You don't get to ban my kids. Karen, this pool is part of the community. We pay our dues just like everyone else. If you have a problem, you can take it up with the actual HOA, not my children." Her lips tightened, but she didn't back down. Instead, she smirked. "We'll see about that." And just like that, the stage was set. What was supposed to be a relaxing afternoon at the pool had just escalated into a neighborhood showdown, one that Karen never saw coming. Karen didn't waste any time making her ban official. Within minutes, she marched over to a group of families lounging in the shade, whispering and gesturing toward me and my kids as though she were rallying an army. I could see heads turning, eyebrows raising, and the unmistakable ripple of gossip spreading across the pool deck. My kids, still standing at the edge of the water, looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. I leaned down and whispered, "Don't worry. You're not in trouble. She's just trying to scare us." But deep down I was boiling. Watching Karen strut around like she owned the place made my blood pressure rise. She returned, clipboard in hand like a badge of authority. "I've spoken to the others," she announced loudly, as if she were delivering a public decree. "The consensus is clear. Children are disruptive and shouldn't be allowed in the pool during peak hours." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I caught several parents shaking their heads in disbelief. One father, sitting nearby with his toddler on his lap, muttered, "This is ridiculous." A mother with two young girls whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "She can't do that." I took a step forward, refusing to let Karen's theatrics intimidate me. "First of all, you don't speak for this community. Second, my kids have every right to be here. If you want to start making rules, you'd better have the HOA president sitting beside you with a signed letter in hand." Karen's face flushed red, but she didn't back down. She jabbed her finger toward me. "You're being confrontational. If you don't remove your children, I'll be forced to call security." The word security seemed to hang in the air. Parents exchanged uneasy glances, and even the kids splashing in the pool stopped to watch. My own children clutched their towels tighter, their excitement for the day drowned out by fear. That was the moment I decided. Enough was enough. I wasn't about to let Karen's bullying ruin my kids' summer or set a precedent that she could boss everyone around. I stood tall, projecting calm authority even though my heart was racing. "Go ahead and call them," I said evenly. I'd love for you to explain to security why you're trying to ban children from a family pool. The smirk on her face faltered. She clearly hadn't expected me to push back so boldly. Around us, parents began murmuring, some even nodding in agreement. For the first time, Karen looked unsure of herself. Still, she wasn't ready to admit defeat. "Fine," she snapped. "But when security gets here, you'll regret this." I knew then and there this battle was far from over. Karen was about to take things to the next level. It didn't take long, barely 20 minutes after Karen's threat. A uniformed security guard appeared at the pool gate, his radio crackling faintly at his side. Karen's face lit up with triumph the moment she spotted him, as if she had just summoned reinforcements in her personal crusade. She hurried over to him, practically dragging him toward me. "That's them," she declared, pointing at my kids like they were fugitives on the run. "These children are disturbing the peace and violating pool regulations. I've already spoken to other residents, and they agree they shouldn't be allowed here." The guard looked at her, then at me, then at the kids, who were now sitting quietly on their towels, their excitement completely drained. His brow furrowed. "What exactly did they do?" he asked. Karen launched into a dramatic performance, waving her arms for emphasis. "They splash too much, they yell, they run around, it's chaos. This pool is supposed to be a safe, relaxing environment, and their behavior puts everyone at risk." I couldn't help myself. I actually laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but the kind that comes out when something is just so absurd, it defies belief. "They haven't even gotten in the water yet," I said, gesturing to my kids, who were sitting stiffly beside me. She decided to ban them before they even swam a single lap. The security guard's expression shifted. He turned back to Karen, clearly less than impressed. "Ma'am, do you have any written rule, policy, or HOA notice that says children aren't allowed in the pool?" Karen froze. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Well, no, but it's common sense. The community expects responsible residents to set boundaries. Someone has to protect the pool from being turned into a kiddie splash zone." By now, parents sitting nearby were openly watching, some even smirking at Karen's unraveling act. A few kids giggled, whispering to each other as Karen's authority cracked under the guard's steady gaze. The guard shook his head. "Ma'am, unless there's an official rule from the HOA, there's nothing to enforce here. Kids are allowed in the pool." Then, turning to me, he added, "You and your children have every right to be here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The weight lifted instantly from my shoulders, and I could see relief in my children's eyes. Karen, on the other hand, looked like she had just swallowed a lemon. She tried to recover, but her voice quivered with frustration. "You'll regret siding against me," she muttered before storming off toward her lounge chair. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. She would come back with something bigger. For a short while, things actually felt normal again. My kids finally dipped into the pool, their laughter bubbling back as they splashed around with the other children. Parents relaxed, conversations resumed, and the tension seemed to evaporate into the summer air. But anyone who knew Karen knew peace wouldn't last. I kept one eye on her as she sulked in the corner, furiously scribbling into her clipboard, as though she were drafting a declaration of war. Her lips moved silently, like she was rehearsing arguments to herself. Then, just when I thought she might finally give up, she sprang to her feet. Karen marched over to a small group of parents seated under the umbrellas, waving papers in the air. "Sign this," she demanded, her voice sharp and commanding. "It's a petition to restrict pool access during certain hours, so children don't disturb the adults." The parents blinked at her in disbelief. One of the mothers laughed outright. "You can't be serious." Karen's eyes narrowed. "If we don't take control, this pool will become nothing but a noisy daycare. Think about it. Don't you want peace? Don't you want order?" A dad sipping his soda shook his head. "Karen, it's a neighborhood pool, not a spa. Kids are supposed to be here." But Karen was relentless. She tried each parent one by one, thrusting the petition at them like a weapon. Most refused outright. A few awkwardly mumbled excuses and turned away. I thought she might finally run out of steam, But then she made her biggest mistake yet. Karen stormed over to the HOA president, who had just arrived with her own kids in tow. You could practically feel the shift in the atmosphere as she launched into her pitch. We need to ban children during peak hours. It's disruptive. It's dangerous. Look around. You'll see I'm right. The HOA president raised her eyebrows, clearly unimpressed. Karen, my kids are in that pool right now. The color drained from Karen's face, but she pressed on. Well, yes, but surely you see the problem. They set a bad example. Children make everything chaotic. By this point, parents were openly chuckling. Even the HOA president let out a disbelieving laugh. Karen, enough! Kids are welcome here. And if you keep harassing families, you might be the one facing a pool ban. The air went still. Karen's jaw dropped, her clipboard trembling in her hands. For once, she had no snappy comeback. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. Karen had finally overplayed her hand, and the price for her arrogance was about to come due. After the HOA president's warning, the entire pool seemed to exhale. Parents exchanged grins, children splashed louder than before, and the tension that had hung over us for hours finally broke. But Karen? She stood frozen, clutching her clipboard, like a sinking ship clings to the last patch of air. I thought she might storm off in silence, but Karen never goes quietly. With her voice trembling, but still sharp, she made one last attempt at control. "This isn't over," she declared. "You'll all regret not listening to me. You'll see how out of hand things get." But her words didn't carry weight anymore. The spell had been broken. Parents rolled their eyes, kids giggled, and the HOA president didn't even bother responding. Karen slumped back into her chair, her once commanding presence reduced to little more than background noise. Meanwhile, my kids swam like nothing had happened, laughing, splashing, racing each other to the deep end. Their joy was the ultimate answer to Karen's attempt at banning them. Every smile, every splash, was proof that she had failed. Then came the final blow. A week later, an official notice went out to the entire community from the HOA board. It addressed recent complaints regarding pool usage and firmly clarified that all residents and their families, including children, are welcome to enjoy the pool at any time during operating hours. At the bottom of the letter was a warning. Though it didn't mention her by name, everyone knew who it was aimed at. It stated that any resident found harassing or attempting to restrict access to others without HOA authorization will face disciplinary action, including possible suspension of pool privileges. The neighborhood buzzed with the news. Parents shared knowing smiles when they crossed paths. Kids talked about it like it was the juiciest summer story. And Karen? She went noticeably quiet. She still came to the pool sometimes, but without her clipboard and without her usual bravado. Instead of barking orders, she kept her head down, reading her book and avoiding eye contact. It turned out the person who had tried to ban others ended up one step away from being banned herself. And in a way, that was justice. As for my kids, they never forgot that summer. It became a story they loved to retell, complete with exaggerated impressions of Karen's voice and dramatic reenactments of her storming around with her clipboard. What had started as a stressful, infuriating day ended as a family legend. The time Karen tried to ban them from swimming and instantly paid the price. Because in the end, the pool belonged to everyone, not just her. And no self-appointed rule maker could change that.